Good morning, beloved community. My name is Ian Gray, and I am the worship associate for April. I am so glad that you are here today. Whether you are in this room or you're joining us online or seeing this sometime later, however you've arrived to this place and time, I want you to know that we are glad for your presence today. If this is your first time, welcome. It takes courage to walk into a new space, and we are grateful that you are here. If you're returning, welcome back. If you have been here year after year since what feels like the Paleocene, know that we are grateful for your presence always. Each Sunday, we gather to seek meaning, to grow in compassion, and to connect more deeply with each other and the world. We do not all follow a single path, but walk together in the search for truth. Today's service, admittedly, leans into the science, into the story of Earth and the cosmos, and how they have shaped life here. From molten beginnings to the oceans and shifting continents, we remember that we are not separate from this story. We are a part of it. We are the result of it. Yasmin Jackson and I will reflect on what it means to live as beings shaped by both Earth and cosmos, and what responsibility comes with that awareness. Where the story of life on Earth may at times sound like a lecture, the facts are only the beginning. The meaning is what we make together today. So, as we begin, I invite you all to take a deep breath. To feel the ground beneath you, to remember the sky above you, and to settle in. Let us begin our service with the lighting of our chalice. Fire in the Universe by Sean Trapp. Our chalice reminds us that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It is our reminder that all is connected, even through the space of the vast void. And our experience here is but a blip in the cosmic timeline. This flame is our promise that in our smallness and our short time on this earth, that we live intently and deeply, with love for one another, with honesty and integrity, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and with a sense of shared responsibility. For, as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminds us, this pale blue dot is the only home we have ever known.
And now, for our opening words from Ursula K. Le Guin, The Farthest Shore. Science describes accurately from outside. Poetry describes accurately from inside. Science explicates, poetry implicates. Both celebrate what they describe. We need the languages of both science and poetry to save us from merely stockpiling endless information that fails to inform our ignorance or our irresponsibility.
Today, we are going to tell a story. Not a myth, not a metaphor, but a story written in stone and told by starlight. It is the story of our Earth and life itself. The story is how the world came to be. Like many stories, it doesn't have all the details, and we will be skipping over some sections. And we are always learning more. But we do hope you enjoy our story today. A long time ago, in a galaxy we now call the Milky Way, a massive star exploded at the end of its life. It scattered the heavy elements that it created in its core into the cosmic dust surrounding it. The pressure of this blast caused those neighboring clouds to collapse, letting gravity take over, pulling in the diffuse matter until it was hotter and denser, to the point where the cores of those gas clouds ignited with their own fusion fires. New stars. One of those newly minted stars was, of course, our sun, nearly 5 billion years ago. The leftovers, I do mean the leftovers, of that formation condensed and collapsed into their own small bodies, pulling in metals, rocks, gas, ice, depending on where they were in their formation. In this cosmic nursery, they fought and pushed one another, the planetary roller derby of gravity and angular momentum. Dozens, maybe hundreds of planetesimals smashed, merged, and smashed again. The titanic gas giants throwing around their newfound mass, casting their smaller brethren out into the icy depths, while sending the inner solar system into a new round of chaos. One of the last major mergers, we think, from this era was of a body we call Theia, a Mars-sized planet that collided with our proto-Earth. The evidence of this was not left on our surface. That was instantly melted again. But deep within our core and in our very rocks, we have too much iron for a world our size, and the moon's chemistry is far too similar to our own. These and so much more evidence gathered over the years has led to the giant impactor hypothesis. Our larger iron core gave us a stronger magnetic field, and our newly formed moon cooled and pulled away, slowing our rotation and stabilizing our orbit and axis, giving us seasons and tide and setting the stage for life far on the horizon. But still, for a very long time, Earth was hell.
4.6 billion years ago, our home, Earth, began in fire and brimstone. Our planet's surface was characterized not by brilliant blue oceans or lush verdant trees and soil, but fiery magma oceans. Asteroids and meteors rained down on the Earth like missiles. If you were to survive the meteor showers in the magma ocean, you would have still been burned alive by the sizzling heat emanating from the planet's interior. It would take thousands of years for the planet to cool enough for minerals to crystallize from the magma ocean and differentiate based on their density. Heavier minerals formed our core, and silica and alkali-rich minerals formed the mantle and the crust. Two types of crust would form. One sank beneath the oceans to form the floors, while the other rose above the waters to form the land on which we now stand. With the planet's cooling, the hellscape that once proved deadly now provided life's most precious resource, water. The volcanoes also released gases into the atmosphere, including water vapor. This vapor condensed in the clouds and fell back to the ground as rain. The meteors, which seemed dry, contained minute but measurable quantities of water encased in their constituent minerals. Over 1 million years, both of these hazards gifted us with our first oceans, the gift in which life began. When early organisms opened their eyes 3.8 billion years ago, they swam in the oceans of a world that would be alien to us now. Yellow, orange skies over green, toxic oceans, hostile to nearly all forms of life today. A world completely devoid of oxygen. Instead, it was comprised of methane, carbon dioxide, sulfur, nitrogen, and water vapor. Although sunlight splits water vapor into oxygen and hydrogen, the oxygen in this environment reacted instantly with methane and became incorporated into the Earth's crust, leaving barely any traces in the atmosphere. At that time, living organisms had to break down minerals to generate their energy. Around 2.7 billion years ago, a new group of organisms would incite a revolutionary change in life on this planet. These organisms are the cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria have the unique ability to perform photosynthesis and use water as a fuel source by oxidizing it. The byproduct of this photosynthesis is, of course, oxygen. For millions of years, these cyanobacteria slowly release oxygen molecules into the oceans and the atmospheres. The rate of this increase would dramatically spike once these single-cell bacteria evolved into multicellular organisms. This drastic alteration in our atmosphere's chemistry decimated anaerobic bacteria, which could not survive in the newly oxygenated world, resulting in the world's first mass extinction event. However, despite all this death, this new world permitted aerobic organisms to survive, paving the way for more complex forms of life to evolve. Stromatolites, like what you see on the screen, are all that remain of these early cyanobacteria's existence. If you are lucky enough to see one of these structures in real life, make sure to say thank you. It's because of these little guys that we can breathe today.
Take a deep breath and thank the slimy rocks. And so oxygen entered our story, and the world would never be the same. What began as a waste product of microscopic life becomes a planetary shaping force. As oxygen slowly accumulates in the atmosphere, it rusts out the oceans. It reacts with the methane, weakening the greenhouse gas effect and triggering an event of global cooling. For the organisms that came before, oxygen was toxic, a destabilizing factor that ruined their chemistry that they depended on. The result was not a gradual change, but a crisis, that first mass extinction event. As life was forced to adapt to a fundamentally new environment or disappear. But this shift did more than reshape life. It reshaped the planet itself. And for the first time, life was not just responding to Earth's systems, it was actively transforming them, altering the atmosphere, the oceans, and the climate on a global scale. The rise of oxygen changed how energy moved through the planet, how the carbon cycled between the air and the sea, and how heat was retained and lost. Geology and biology now drove the climate, with shifting continental positioning, increasing global weathering, which further reduced the greenhouse gases. That instability led to one of the most extreme states the planet has ever experienced. As the greenhouse gases continued to decline, ice began to spread. The reflectivity increased, amplifying the cooling in a runaway feedback loop. Earth entered its first period of near global glacialization, what we now call the snowball Earth. Keep in mind, the sun was about 85% as bright as it is today, resulting in a mile-thick ice sheet across most of the world, which extended from the poles towards the equator. Whether it was completely frozen or if it was still slushy in the middle is still being debated. But this frozen world persisted for millions of years, pushing that new life into the narrow margins of the slushy equator and the dark depths of the oceans, where it may have first evolved, enduring under extreme pressure and conditions. And yet, in this state, the planet was still ever changing. Volcanic activity continued to release carbon dioxide, slowly rebuilding the atmosphere, with weathering processes halted by the glacial ice cover. That CO2 accumulated until finally the balance tipped and a period of global warming. Rapid warming, dramatic thawing, and a transition from an abrupt frozen world to a greenhouse planet. The oceans mixing, nutrients circling, oxygen levels rising once again, only for it to tip back into glacial oblivion. By this time, this would go on several times. By the time the ice retreated for good, the Earth was no longer the same planet it was before. These repeated cycles of oxygenation, extinction, freezing, and recovery fundamentally reorganized the chemistry of the oceans and the atmosphere. They increased the amount of oxygen, redistributed nutrients, and created new ecological pressures. Life had not just survived these changes, but it was shaped by them, becoming multicellular to survive. Refined through these repeated global crises, even the most complex life on Earth at the time, which was probably a sponge, but it entered into a reshaped world ready to become something new. With greater energy available, more complex structures were possible. New ways of living and interacting. Animals, now we have animals, little ones, figured out that for survival, they could eat each other. We now have predators. Others would figure more cooperative methods. Some would do both. At this stage, there is not a single moment, but billions of years of transformation that has already happened. Life found a way to survive, and now it was finally ready to thrive.
An explosion of life began. Well, it will be a misnomer to call what happened during the Cambrian an explosion. Life didn't just suddenly appear accompanied by a Michael Bay-style explosion. Rather, slowly, over millions of years, animal life evolved to form hard parts, shells, bones, vertebrae. The basic body forms found in animals today and even ourselves. Now, why did this happen when the animals that came before them did not? More oxygen. The atmosphere and the oceans had more free oxygen available. The hard parts of marine fauna are made from the molecule calcium carbonate, or CaCO3. Yes, the equation is on the screen. In order to form calcium carbonate, you need oxygen. Lots of it. Chemical reactions, like the one that's on the screen, have to have oxygen present in all the molecules. It's simple. If you do not have oxygen, you do not get backbones and shells. You may have noticed that I have circled in this particular equation carbon dioxide. This will not be the last time carbon dioxide makes an appearance in this story. In the Ordovician period, 100 million years later, the first fish appeared, and the land was soon colonized by plants. This period's mass extinction, brought on by rapid glaciation, once again, would obliterate 85% of marine species, harshly reminding them that they were at the whim of the planet. When the climate finally stabilized in the Silurian period, corals and vascular plants blossomed in their respective kingdoms. Then came the Devonian period, the age of fish. Here we see the first fish with jaws and fins comprised of muscle and bone. Lobed finned fish represented the first step in the origin of tetrapods. Now, if you don't know what a tetrapod is, just take a look at yourselves in the mirror. You are organisms with 4 limbs, meaning our ancestry stems back millions of years into the past to those brave first brave fish pulling themselves onto an ancient shores, like the Tiktaalik, like the little cute guy on the screen. This little guy is the first land-walking fish to be recorded in the fossil record. Its 4 limbs had enough muscular mass to support itself and climb onto land. The Tiktaalik and its evolutionary descendants set the stage for the creation of 2 of our major animal groups, amphibians and reptiles. Even through yet another mass extinction event, driven partly by a supernova that damaged the ozone layer, life would find a way to push forward in its mission to survive, and eventually they would have the oxygen necessary to reach for the heavens. Welcome to the Carboniferous.
Imagine waking up there. The air is thick, not suffocating, but heavy, dense with moisture. Each breath feels fuller, richer, saturating your lungs in a way that feels almost intoxicating. The ground beneath you is soft, not soil as we know it, but spongy, waterlogged mats of decaying plant matter. The decomposers that would break it down into soil haven't evolved yet. So these layers build up season after season, thousands of years of growth that has fallen but not yet returned to the earth. The Carboniferous period, about 359 to 300 million years ago, was named after the massive coal-forming forests and the higher atmospheric oxygen of that era, which produced giant arthropods, the first amphibians, and the earliest reptiles. You stand and you look around. The forest is strange, stretching impossibly high, not trees with leaves and branches like we know it. These are more distantly related to ferns. They are towering columns of scaled structures, giant horsetails rising straight into the air, their surface patterned like bark, but unfamiliar geometric shapes. The world is verdant and green, but it is an ancient green. There are no flowers yet, no grass, no birds. The air hums and buzzes, not with bird song, but with movement. A shadow passes overhead, something that looks like a dragonfly, but not as we know it. Its wingspan stretches 3 feet across, catching the humid air as it glides effortlessly around the canopy. You take a step forward and something shifts near your feet. A fallen log starts to move. A massive 7-foot-long millipede-like creature, as thick as your waist, starts slowly moving through the underbrush. Its many chitinous legs rippling in a steady mechanical rhythm as it hunts the forest floor. The forest is full of these low, rustling plants, the buzz of enormous insects, and the distant splashing in the tepid, shallow water that gives way to the sprawling wetlands that dominated this era. Near the water's edge, you might catch a glimpse of something else, the first true amphibians. Not quite fish that had come from the oceans earlier, but not quite fully land-dwelling either, still relying on it for reproduction and safety. Their bodies are low to the ground, their limbs still learning what it means to carry the weight of air instead of water. Life is experimenting, and everywhere around you, it is growing, reaching, expanding, breathing, with oxygen levels that were far higher than they are today. It allows these bodies of the pioneers of this era to grow large and experiment, fueling metabolism and feeding their vast, slow-burning expansion across the land. It feels so abundant, endless even. For the next 60 million years, these forests will grow around the world, trapping carbon in their bodies to be slowly buried. The sunlight that fueled their metabolism trapped and slowly turned to stone through geologic processes of heat and pressure. The oceans of this world are full of life, and this is happening to the phytoplankton and zooplankton of the era. They are still with us today in our gas tanks. All of those forests are where we get our coal. And those ancient oceans are where we get our fuel. It took 90 million metric tons of ancient phytoplankton to make 1 gallon of gas. We are burning 60 million years of ancient life in a century.
After the Carboniferous, life continued to flourish, but it would soon face its greatest threat. Another mass extinction event was on the horizon, one that would be even more catastrophic than anything this planet has ever seen, even more so than the famous extinction of non-avian dinosaurs. 251 million years ago, many of the species that thrived through the Paleozoic would not survive what was to come. 70% of the terrestrial species and 90% of marine species would perish. Scientists called this mass extinction the Great Dying. a volcanic complex that covered half of Russia violently erupted. If you recognize or remember the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption in Washington State, the volume of lava spewed from these eruptions is equivalent to 4 million Mount St. Helens eruptions. If that wasn't bad enough carbon dioxide was released to warm the planet by 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It was not fun time living in the Great Dying. Let's just say that. You see, carbon dioxide is a two-sided coin. On one side, we need it to survive. However, the other side of the coin emerges when there is too much carbon dioxide. In some cases, CO2, carbon dioxide, reacts with water to produce carbonic acid, which then breaks down calcium carbonate to form calcium bicarbonate. If these animals do not have calcium carbonate, their hard parts would ultimately dissolve and they will die. Here, carbon dioxide was no longer a key ingredient to create life. It was now a key ingredient to destroy life. Over 30 million years, the survivors of the Great Dying picked up what little remained in the ashes and carved out a new existence. The first true reptiles emerged, and the age of the dinosaurs began. These creatures would come to dominate the land, the sea, the sky, and began their long reign of the Mesozoic, the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. And yes, even though it's my favorite movie, Jurassic Park should have been named Cretaceous Park. But alas, their reign would ultimately come to an end during the most famous mass extinction event 66 million years ago, with a death from geology and astronomy.
Oh, you know I had to take the giant impact part. Around 66 million years ago, the boundary between the Cretaceous and Paleogene, Earth experienced a sudden and catastrophic transformation, which we did not understand for a very long time. We know that this is not just a theory, but it is written into the global signal of the rocks itself. We were hit from space. All around the world, there is a thin layer marking that exact moment in the geologic record, with an unusual concentration of iridium. Iridium is one of those rare elements. It's deep in our core. You don't find it at the surface. So to find it evenly spread around the entirety of the globe at the same time, yeah. But it is, while a rare element on Earth, it is relatively common in asteroids. Within the same layer, we also found grains of shocked quartz and tiny glass spheroids, materials formed only under extreme pressure and temperature changes, like that of a cosmic impact. These clues led scientists to a massive crater hidden beneath the Yucatan Peninsula, the Chicxulub impact site, whose size and age align precisely with this moment in Earth's history. Pollen in the gills of fossilized lake fish, instantly buried in that moment, tell us that it was late spring. The impact was of an asteroid, C-type Carboniferous, based on the ruthidium and other elements, roughly 10 to 15 kilometers wide. It released an immense amount of energy, producing a 110-mile wide crater. Lingering wildfires, massive tsunamis. It sent dust and sulfur aerosols high into the atmosphere where they blocked sunlight, disrupting photosynthesis and triggering rapid cooling. often described as an impact winter. Food webs collapsed across both land and sea, and nearly 75% of all species, including all of the non-avian dinosaurs, disappeared. At the same time, Earth was already under strain. The Deccan traps, similar to the Siberian traps, but much smaller, they are located in India. And while a fraction of the size of the volcanism released during the Great Dying, it was still producing massive volcanic eruptions that released vast amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur gases, altering the climate and changing the ocean chemistry. Astronomy tells us that impacts like this, while rare, are an inevitable part of our planetary history. Geology shows us the consequences. Here, when the two forces converged. A world already stressed was pushed past its tipping point from something beyond itself.
The fight for survival did not end soon after the asteroid struck off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. In fact, it was just beginning. For thousands of years, organisms fought for their niche in the ecosystem. The sky was full of ash, and the impact winter cooled the continents by 20 degrees Fahrenheit, effectively shutting down photosynthesis for several years. Without that foundation of our ecosystem, without photosynthesis, plants died, and the ecosystem collapsed, causing many species to starve. But soon, hope would bloom in the form of an unlikely hero and villain, the mushroom. This cold, dark world full of death and decay was paradise to these fungi, and they proliferated in massive blooms. They offered a major food source for the survivors. That's if they could reach it. Reptiles, whose body temperature and energy relies on their external environment, struggled to forage and digest this plethora of food. However, small mammals, which could better regulate their body temperature, had no such trouble. These little critters also had the metabolism to fight off the myriad of infectious diseases also produced by this fungal bloom. Since reptiles relied on the sun's heat to fight off infections, they didn't stand a chance against their mammalian rivals. Even worse, fungi can burrow into and infect the embryos of shelled eggs. This multi-pronged attack decimated reptilian populations, ousting them from their throne and paving the way for another group of animals to take over. Despite being no larger than a badger at this time, mammals thrived underfoot of the giants and didn't just survive the mass extinction. They thrived. With their diminutive size and endothermic bodies, they were able to conquer the ecological niches that colossal animals struggled to reach. They seized their new place and launched a new age in Earth's history, the age of mammals.
Before we were human, we were small. Far from the rulers of the world, but resilient creatures surviving at the margins. Early mammals moved through the shadow and the underbrush, while the larger, more dominant life filled the earth. Our lineage did not rise from a straight line towards greatness. It slowly endured. It survived extinction after extinction, each one narrowing the possibilities for life until only a few paths remained, only to explode into new possibility. Even over the long, uncertain, winding path of becoming human, that fragility did not end. That story is written in our DNA. It tells us that our species has survived a very narrow passage before, a bottleneck where the number of hominids may have fallen to only a few thousand, perhaps fewer. Everything that would be human one day, for more than a moment, was on the brink of extinction. We are not here because our survival was inevitable. We are here because through chance and resilience and the conditions that were just right, our species was able to hold on through the brink. Every one of us is a descendant of those very few who made it through that narrowing, who carried that story forward when it could have ended, only to explode into new possibility. And then we walked and walked and walked with our evolutionary adaptations for endurance, collaboration, and tool usage, making us a dangerous, community-oriented pursuit predator. From those earliest beginnings in Africa, over tens of thousands of years, small groups of humans began to move outward, following coastlines, rivers, herds, seasonal changes over land that no human had ever seen. They crossed deserts and mountains, endured bitter cold and scarcity, slowly, generation after generation, spreading across the continents, connected in ways that are not possible today. The result of repeated ice ages, shifting coastlines, opening land bridges, we were able to walk across the world. And we were not alone in this journey. Our evolutionary siblings and cousins and the other Homo species were already there. Neanderthals in Europe, the Dinovians in Asia, each carrying their own history, their own way of being nearly human. We met them. We lived alongside them. We intermingled. We fought and killed each other. Traces of those encounters remain within us even now. But over time, all of those other lineages faded away. And we were the ones that remained. Not because we were destined to, but because history just unfolded that way. We're what remains. But we kept moving across ice bridges into the Americas, over open ocean with boats and canoes to distant islands until there was no corner of the earth that was untouched by human presence. For such a fragile beginning, we became a species that did not just live in the world, but one that came to inhabit it entirely, and we have shaped it.
Here we are in the Anthropocene. Time to make y'all depressed. The age of humans is not a geologic, an official geologic epoch, but some scientists have proposed it to highlight how much we have altered the chemistry of our planet and, in a way, ourselves. Since 1950, carbon dioxide concentrations have increased to a point not seen in 1 million years, at the very least. Our oceans have once again become acidic, and marine organisms like our corals are dying. Close to half of our current species are on the brink of extinction, and they are not the only ones suffering from the effects of our own pollution. Microplastics, for example, another type of pollution we've emitted to our environment, are finding their way into our bodies through our food and water, through the air we breathe, even through our skin and hair. They have been found in every major organ in our body, including our heart, our brain, the placenta, and even in breast milk. Yes, everybody, we are passing this disease onto our children from birth. Microplastics have been found in our infants. I'm saying all this to illustrate that we are not just trying to save the planet. We are trying to save ourselves. As a species, we often think of ourselves not as animals. However, today's story shows us otherwise. We are part of the same web of life as corals, dinosaurs, and the Tiktaalik. We are just as vulnerable to changes in our environment as they are. With this knowledge, we have the responsibility to care for the earth and the billions of our brethren around the world, human and non-human. If we continue to neglect our duty, it will be our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren that will have to find a way to cure a hotter and dying world. We have a chance to play our small part right here, right now. The world has had 5 major mass extinction events and dozens of smaller ones. The earth has been bathed in fire and encased in ice. It has been brought to the brink so many times, yet life persists. We burn millions of years of trapped carbon from billions of years ago, shaping the chemistry and the climate of our world. But the difference between us and our ancestors, like the stromatolites, we know what we're doing. And we have the power to fix it. Because life, Earth's most resilient and fragile treasure, will find a way to survive. But the question is, will we? Thank you all.
And now, for our closing words from Ursula K. Le Guin, again, The Farthest Shore. The winds and seas, the powers of water and earth and light, all that these do, and all that the beasts and green things do, is well done and rightly done. All these act within the equilibrium. From the hurricane and the great whales sounding to the fall of a dry leaf and the gnat's flight, all they do is done within the balance of the whole. But we, insofar as we have power over the world and over one another, we must learn to do what the leaf and the whale and the wind do of their own nature. We must learn to keep the balance. Having intelligence, we must not act in ignorance. Having choice, we must not act without responsibility.
As we extinguish our chalice, we have a blessing of darkness and light by Anne Zucker Morenston. Blessed is the dark in which our dreams stir and are revealed. Blessed is the dark of earth where seeds come to life. Blessed are the depths of the ocean where no light shimmers, the womb of all earthly life. Blessed is the light in which we awake, the light that sparks on water, that calls the tree forth from seed, that calls shadow forth from tree. Blessed are we who move through darkness and light.